There's a story about a man who throughout his whole life was known for boasting. Even in his old age, he boasted about the hearing aids that he had brought. He was explaining to a friend how the hearing aids have fully restored his hearing. And so his friend asked, well, how long have you had them? And the man said, $350. On Monday, we began to think about the promised land that God gave his people and how, even though they lost the land during the exile, God was going to restore it back to them. On Wednesday, we looked at the king on the donkey and how the victory of God over the enemies in the land will come through suffering. Today, unlike the man with the hearing aids, we'll see how the people of God are restored fully into their promised land. Zechariah 9 verse 11. As for you, because of the blood of your covenant, I will release your prisoners from the waterless cistern. Return to a stronghold, you prisoners who have hope. Today I declare that I will restore double to you. Now God's people have returned from exile, but because they're not fully occupying the promised land, it's as if they're still prisoners. I mean, they're no longer in Babylon, but they're not fully in Israel. And so God makes 4 promises to his people. The first is that he will release them from feeling like they're still captives. And then second, he will restore them double what was taken from them. The idea of double is a theme that flows through the Old Testament. For example, in Isaiah 40 verse 1, comfort my people, says your God. Speak tenderly to Jerusalem and announce to her that her time of hard service is over. Her iniquity has been pardoned, and she has received from the Lord's hand double for all her sins. Okay, so the double judgment of God will soon become a double blessing from God. The third promise of God is that he will equip his people for the battle against the nations around them. Zechariah 9 verse 13. For I will bend Judah as my bow. I will make you like a warrior's sword. Then the Lord will appear over them, and his arrow will fly like lightning. The Lord of armies will defend them. They will consume and conquer with slingshots. Okay, so God will defend his people and equip them for battle, just as he does with us. However, the battle that we've been equipped for is a spiritual battle. A spiritual battle that wages both physically and spiritually. The fourth promise is the promise of salvation. Zechariah 9 verse 16. The Lord their God will save them on that day as the flock of his people, for they are like jewels in a crown, sparkling over his land. How lovely and beautiful. Grain will make the young men flourish, and new wine the young women. So the message of Zechariah 9 is that God will uphold the promises that he made through his prophets. He will release his people, restore his people, and give victory and salvation to his people. However, as the temple is not yet rebuilt and the land is not yet fully theirs, these promises look forward to the future. The people of God in Zechariah's day looked in anticipation to the coming of the king who will bring victory through suffering. Now, we don't look for his coming because Jesus has already come and he has already won victory over sin and death. However, we look in anticipation to the second coming of Christ, to the return of Jesus and the day when everything that is wrong in the world and in our lives will be restored to how it was for Adam and Eve in the garden. Friends, we live in between the death and resurrection of Jesus and the return of Jesus. And so even though we know that full restoration will come, we don't experience that restoration right now. And so with that in mind, why don't you spend a couple of minutes in prayer and ask God to help you to look forward to the day of restoration, and while you wait, to help to share with others the great promise of eternal restoration.
Who else could